have to make it a lifelong decision.
That's why I think we have to have people realize that with the senior population growing and growing and growing, then you're going to have to get long-term care when you're younger, and in some way we're going to have to require that we save this. I really mean that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody on the left?
I'm skipping anyway. We're just going to do the tables, and then I'll head down and then go back. So it's just going.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. Basically, predecessor, rest his soul, he understood the meaning of town halls, and I was hoping that you would speak less up front and give more time for questions, because you went
We still
like
got
almost
50
an hour.
minutes.
Okay, but it's town hall is for us. My questions, I have two short questions. One is, why did you support the Ryan budget, which calls for cuts to Social Security and Medicare? And it does.
The Ryan budget does not touch Social Security.
They don't want
It does not touch Social
to
Security.
stand
Because I was in the meeting when we had the discussion.
there. They don't.
It doesn't
They don't
touch it
want
as
to
it pertains to us. You know,
No, it does
seniors
not
now.
touch Social Security. It deals with Medicare.
And why is it we have the second highest corporate tax rate, but yet so many of our corporations pay no taxes.
Well,
They get oil subsidies. Exxon gets oil subsidies, and they report record profits. Why
Let me-
aren't we
let me
going
tell you-
after those things?
Let me
Why
tell
are
you
we-
about,
why are we
let me
supporting
tell you about the tax
millionaires'
code.
tax?
Let me tell you about the tax code. The loopholes were there. They were created because these companies are screaming that they're going to flee the country because their tax rate's too high.
That's right.
And they sit there and they beat up Congress to allow them to create these loopholes. That's what we're trying to eliminate, to bring the tax base down and eliminate those loopholes.
So maybe one
So
of
therefore, it's going to eliminate them, and well, frankly, it's going to put more money back into the system because the loopholes are going to go away.
But maybe one of the things that we could get rid of are the lobbyists. Because you know what? They're one of the ones that they're ruining this country. Was their interests, millions and millions and millions of dollars
Who's going on a lobbyist?
for
Obama.
protecting the rights,
Obama.
rights,
Bringing them in.
protecting the
He
money
was gonna get
in
rid
this
of them.
country, the big money, the 1% of people or corporations that own 80% of the wealth that the gentleman referred to. So I think that we have to look at the low-hanging fruit in things.
You also have to look at name a nonprofit that doesn't have a Washington D.C. lobby.
Judy.
You know, if we got rid of them, it would be fair playing field.
I'm just
It's a
saying.
fair playing field.
I'm just saying.
And the other question that I have is, I sincerely hope that you're going to have more town halls, because I found out about this from the Asbury Park Press, thank God. I'm from Barnegat, I came up from Barnegat, and I saw
I'm gonna
somebody
take your
signing
picture.
from Marlton, which is in your neck of the woods. You need to have more town halls. You need to make yourself
We do.
accessible to the voters.
And I've gotten that question, and
Excuse me?
I want to address that because that came up. Obviously, I think we've had some very partisan meetings. I think my first town hall in Berkeley was turned into a screaming match, frankly, in about 5 minutes. And I do a lot of small events like this where it is civil. We can have a discussion. I told you in the beginning, I've talked to over 20,000 people on telephone town halls, which I think is also a great one because I can conduct them while I'm in Washington, D.C., and everybody's on the phone listening in. Town halls are about communicating. We get hundreds, some weeks, depending on what's happening in Washington and how upset people are, thousands of phone calls a day. Get all that information. We've sent out tens of thousands of letters communicating. That's what it's all about. The problem is that it's become so polarized that a lot of times to accomplish things in a large town hall setting is almost impossible.
I disagree. way. I think there's a way of controlling, just like before with people got a little pot. You know, I think.
Well, this is civil compared to.
Right. No, I understand. Hey, I went to all the Adler town halls, let me tell you. They were not, and just about the balanced budget amendment, we don't need an amendment to balance the budget. Balanced budget is a normal financial responsibility of any financial organization.
So
any
then why not,
organization.
then why not make an amendment to the Constitution to hold people's feet to the fire to do it?
Well, yeah, but so then you make an amendment for everything that people don't do. We make our Congress people accountable to balance the budget. We have the Equal Rights Amendment. That's an amendment that's been going around for 30, 40 years that hasn't been approved yet. That is an amendment, Equal Rights Amendment, not a balanced budget amendment that should be a part of any financial task.
Well, obviously it's not, and it needs to be fixed.
So,
We
if you
have
don't make
moved way off the
amendments
subject.
for it-
Excuse me, ma'am. We've moved way off the subject. So people know this is not a town hall. This is a private club. So you are corrected. This is a private club. This is not a town hall meeting. This is not a town hall meeting.
Thank you, Brian. If I may, I'd like to get back to something very basic, something very fundamental. I give you the basis of my question first, if I may. I received an email that reportedly originated at the Food and Drug Administration. In this email, it was stated that one of the problems with cost of medications, which is a major factor in Medicare and the whole medical crisis that we're facing, is that if you buy a brand drug, let's say it would cost you $125. If you buy a generic, the pharmacy may offer it to you for $80, and of course that seems like a very big bargain. The fact, however, is that the pharmacy is probably obtaining that generic drug for $7 or $8, and the 800 to 1,000% markup, which is very common with generic drugs. One fact that it did provide, or one suggestion that it provided, is that they're going to Costco, where you do not have to be a member, you can obtain the exact same prescriptions for substantially less, because they only mark up their generic drugs by 8 to 10%. So I went online and I checked it, and in fact it said, it verified this on their website. I actually went to Costco, and just so you know, prescriptions which I had previously filled at the lowest rate discount pharmacy in the area on 37, and those two prescriptions had cost me $139. When I filled them the previous time, I filled the exact same prescriptions at Costco for, it would have cost me $28.79 had I not had insurance. With my insurance and the copay, it was $18.34. Now, given the financial crisis that we're in, and the concern over Medicare and prescription drugs, and the fact that there are people, some even in our community, who have to make a choice between food or medication, do you know whether there has been or is going to be any investigation into this price gouging on, and I have no other way to describe it, on generic drugs? And if not, is this something that you would be willing to investigate? I can provide you with documentation for everything that I've stated.
Well, I think when you look at something like that, obviously, you've found a place where it's cheaper. And I think a lot of it in the world we live in, it's about being a smart consumer. You can't, a convenience store to go buy a loaf of bread is more expensive than going to the supermarket to buy. You're charged for that convenience. You have to be a smart consumer in that aspect. When you talk about, I had, a lot of people don't ever make this correlation, but back when we did patent reform, it's going to have a huge, if the Senate ever takes that up and passes that, that's going to have a huge impact on the cost of drugs, period. Because of the fact, when you have the patent and your 20 years runs out, well, they sign up for the patent early on, and then the FDA takes forever, you've got a very small window to make up that billions of dollars in research and development that they've done before that patent runs out and it becomes a generic drug. And I think that right there will help bring down the cost of most drugs, because they'll have a longer term to actually own the rights to the medicines that they've developed in their own laboratories. And I think that's one thing. Just patent is one thing that's driving a lot of the cost of it, because of the backlog of stuff and the trials that you have to go through with the FDA. And I think we all want safe medications, but every doctor you talk to, they say, well, the FDA's process, you go anywhere else in the world, I can get a drug on the market in 5 years. I don't think a lot of people in the FDA or around here are willing to put experimental type stuff like that out there and really harm Americans.
What I'm referring to, though, if I may, is that these are drugs that have already been approved. They are generic drugs, and if I'm not mistaken, Medicare is already paying some of these exorbitant costs, or incurring some of these exorbitant costs, where there's just such a markup on the generic drugs. And that's being reflected in the Medicare costs that we are trying to fund at this point in time. So what I'm asking is whether there is a way, and whether you would be interested in at least looking into whether there is some way to bring either the pharmacies into compliance, so that there isn't such a large disparity in their actual cost and in their profit, so that it becomes more affordable across the board, and that, I would think, go a long way to helping with the financial crisis in healthcare.
I can tell you it's a possibility, because specifically myself, dealing with the VA has a very, very small price threshold in the medications that they use, because they buy it basically in bulk. They buy it from one supplier, and it's done that way. I obviously, you take something like that that's working in an agency, I don't think it's that hard to carry over. The problem is everyone is resilient to change. Do they want to change their pharmacy? Do they want to do all that kind of stuff? I think that a lot of time, it comes down to the consumer level. I think that, and it's human nature to resist change. Do they want to do it? Do they want to go to the Costco, or be forced to go to the Costco? I think that's the other thing, is where are you overstepping your boundary? I agree with you.
Thank you very much.
It needs to be changed.
John, I'd like to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and tell us all the chores that you're doing there in Washington. I have a few questions, but mainly I'd like to say that, and in answer to the gentleman with the glasses and the ponytail, that I've lived in Europe and I've lived in South America. And sir, we are so fortunate to be here in America. You talk about socialized medicine, you talk about it, but you don't know exactly what it is. In Europe, if you don't get a private doctor to take care of you, that's not within the system, that you're paying privately, you could just go to hell. That's number one. Number two, the lady talked about extended care. Well, John, where does the responsibility of the individual come? Do we look to the government to take care of from the day we're born to the day we die? Right? I mean, there's a certain amount of responsibility that we as an individual have to assume. We can't only look to, and I'll tell you a real funny joke. Across the street, my neighbor, right? He lived in a purple house. Does that give you an idea? Someone's exiting from that house, and I'm out getting my mail. Says, there's a terrible hive in that tree. You should call the town to have that hive removed. Where's that hive? My goodness, it was enormous. I said, the town's not gonna pay for that. I says, it's on your tree, it's on your house, it's your property, you better get someone to remove it. Oh no, you have a community here that takes care of that. Now, I mention that because it's the mentality that prevails, that someone else is going to take care of you. We have to start thinking of taking care of ourselves.
I agree with that.
Okay, and a lot of this is just plain good common sense. Now, I've noticed, because I'm going to have a procedure done shortly, that requires a lot of pre-qualifications from many, many doctors. They're undergoing now, I don't know whether everybody is aware of this, but they're undergoing now a procedure that the government has mandated since 2009, that they've got to get it done by 2014, which is a universal program. It's a software program that everything that you